Hello, and welcome back to Sethatina Newman Live. I did not present last week as I was on vacation with my family, and I did not use any taxpayer money. My husband and I drove ourselves to our destination. We are also planning another trip, but we will also be paying for that trip with our own money as well. Too bad one of the world's wealthiest men does not use his own plane to go to Mar-Largo for a golf weekend. Should Biden have used tax money to go to the beach? Probably not, but he also was not President Trump. I bring that up because so much of what President Trump has been trying to do is identify all the fraudulent spending that has occurred in all the different organizations and agencies of the federal government. Does he have a right to a vacation? Absolutely. Absolutely, he does. But again, I would think that one of the world's wealthiest men, at least the United States' wealthiest men, should be willing to put forth some of his own money to take his vacations. Just wanted to put that out there. But now that I am done with that, on to today's topics. Responses to recent comments on my reel clips from TikTok. So, on my clip about protecting elections, I was told people cannot vote without paperwork. Not true. People cannot register to vote without certain paperwork, but they can vote without having to take anything to the voter stations. I voted and I did not have to present any paperwork, not even my real ID. All I had to say was my name, my address, and what county I was voting for or voting in. That's all I had to say. I was also told that fraud has not occurred in elections. I can personally attest to the fact that there was at least fraudulent non-representation here in Maryland. My vote was not counted in the final tally for the 2024 election. I ran as a write-in candidate. I voted early, and I did type in my name. However, on the final log, the final tally sheet for the results of the election here in Maryland, not only were there no early votes, but there were no votes for Howard County at all under my name. So where did my vote end up? Did it not get counted at all? Did it mistakenly get placed into somebody else's count? Sethatina Newman is a pretty unique name. My name was on the tally sheet as Sethatina Newman. I typed in Sethatina Newman. There were no other names similar to mine on the tally sheet for the election of 2024 in Maryland. So I don't see how it could even have been mistaken as somebody else's name. So that in itself is fraudulent. If my vote was not on that sheet, I don't care where else it went, it was fraudulent. And I realize at this point, there's nothing that I can do. It's done, it's over with. There was no way that I was going to change the result for President Trump or Vice President Kamala Harris. I get that, but it's still fraudulent. So as far as fraudulent elections being debunked, I debunked that debunk because here in Maryland, there was fraud in some way, shape, or form. And I hate to think that more of our states had similar situations. I'm not talking about immigrants voting who aren't registered citizens. I'm talking basic voting by American citizens that aren't getting counted where they should be counted. So yes, fraudulent elections do happen. Way to solve that? Unfortunately, I don't have an answer for it, but they do happen. The next clip I want to talk about is clip for name change, the name change bill, okay, or the bill talking about what's required for voting. I was told to read the bill again. Apparently, a few people believe I am in agreement with the bill. I am not. I believe the bill is ridiculous and should not be passed. We already have requirements for what is needed for a person to register to vote. That's what the bill is about. What is required to register to vote. Not what's required to go vote. This is simply to register to vote. We already have that in place. There doesn't need to be anything different. We already are required to provide identification that states who we are, where we live, and where we were born. There's nothing different in the bill other than nothing. So it's repeating the same thing that's already required. So that bill is ridiculous. I do not support that bill. When I was discussing that bill, I was trying to point out that just what I said, the bill is ridiculous. We already have what is required. With regard to the need to have a real ID, yes, that real ID, that's been a policy since 2005. George W. Bush was president at that time. Yes, he's also a Republican, but it was a bill that was created and passed by Congress. And just like this bill is trying to get passed, it was passed back in 2005. I do not know the reason for the need for that bill. However, I can speculate and only speculate that this law was the result of people making fake IDs for non-documented individuals, college students who wanted to, present themselves as older so that they could get into clubs and whatnot, or for individuals who wanted to be unknown so that they can do whatever business it was that they didn't want to get caught at doing. So again, I can only speculate that that's why we now have to have the real ID so that it can't be fake. So it can't be counterfeited or made by somebody other than the federal government, in that it is made by the Motor Vehicle Administration. Today, I saw a video from a woman who was complaining about her mom not being able to get a real ID because she did not have the correct paperwork. Now, I do feel for this woman. She was divorced back in 1974. She's in her 80s. I believe she's in her 80s now. And though she doesn't have a driver's license, she needs the real ID to be able to register to vote. She doesn't have the divorce paperwork. So it's very difficult for her. And I do feel for that woman in particular, or any women who don't have the paperwork they need. All I can say is that regardless of when the divorce took place, an individual can contact the court and receive a copy of that decree. Plus, all divorces, at least nowadays, are public record. You can look up the date and the names, and the information can be located on the computer. So you can find out what county, what courthouse to go to get that paperwork. And I would encourage any woman to do that, to get the paperwork, to get a real ID. You know, some people, including me to a point, I have a retired military ID card through my husband. Now, that's a federal identification, but that doesn't qualify for registering to vote. You have to use a real ID. Why that can't be used, I'm not 100% sure, but I would think it should be okay, because you have to prove to the military, which is a federal agency, that you are either a citizen or married to a citizen, and that in that case, the person would need to show their citizenship, just as they have to register to vote. So those are some of the reasons that I can think of for why the real ID had to come out, and for why military ID cards might not be accepted as a proof of citizenship. Now, with regards to the name change bill and talking about the woman with where she doesn't have her divorce decree, I also had a reel talking about marriage ID change nightmare. It was not a nightmare. Many people commented on this clip, and it was labeled incorrectly. It was not a nightmare nor difficult. It was simply paperwork. I talked about what I needed in order to get my new ID card once I remarried after a divorce. I had to have my birth certificate, but my birth certificate didn't have my married name, so I had to have my divorce decree, which luckily I had, but again, I could have gotten. I then had to have my marriage certificate showing that I was remarried, which luckily we have a couple copies of those. We paid for them knowing that we would need them for the military ID card, for my ID card, for a passport. We would need that. So we planned ahead and made sure that we had enough copies. My point for that section of my overall podcast was that getting a real ID card is not difficult. Even if you are missing some forms of paperwork, the paperwork can easily be obtained. Did I have to wait 10 days for it to be delivered? Yes. And it's not just because it was Portland, Oregon, that where I had to get the information. That's where I was born. But you have to wait to get the information wherever you live. Even in the same state, if you order it to be delivered, you have to wait the processing time. Okay. Or as one of the comments stated, don't change your name if you get married. You don't have to. It used to be, oh, you always take the husband's name. Well, women have larger roles than just a housewife now and raising children. I wish we didn't have to, but unfortunately, in many cases, we need two incomes to survive nowadays. The woman has to work outside the house. And if the woman chooses to take her husband's name, I don't think she should be penalized. But if you're worried that you don't have the paperwork needed and you don't want to have to go through making sure that you have the marriage certificate and, you know, your birth certificate and everything, then don't change your name. That way, your current name matches your birth certificate. Again, it's entirely up to you which way you want to go as a woman getting married. Now, there is an aspect that some people have forgotten about, and that's whether you get adopted or not. If you don't know that you've been adopted and you order the birth certificate and maybe mom and dad forgot or the court didn't send the information to the right county to get a new birth certificate typed up, maybe your name is different when you order that birth certificate. You might want to check and make sure that your birth certificate is the same as what your current name states. And if it's not, you might want to make sure you have the adoption paperwork. Talk to your parents, find out what's going on, make sure that all the birth certificates say what they're supposed to say. Luckily, mine did. My mom and dad took care of it, and it's right there. It's not a problem. So the next thing that I want to talk about is my clip reel on firing of high-ranking officials. Excuse me. In this clip, I received comments such as, "Do your research. Can't you see they have been ripping us off? The media is fixated on bringing Trump down. The people are not doing their jobs." I appreciate all comments. Absolutely. And yes, I am aware that the government has been ripping us off. Not just recently, though, not just in the last 4 years, not in the last 8 years, but for decades. Not just the Biden administration, not just the Obama administration, not just the Bush's administrations, but literally for decades, if not even for a century. Okay, for any time in our history, political history, since 1776, there's probably been some kind of agency, person who's been ripping off the American people from the taxes that are paid. That in itself, taxing the American people in itself is kind of a ripoff of the American people who work so hard for their money. Isn't that why we got rid of the British? Because they were taxing us on stuff? And yet, look what happened. We're still being taxed on stuff. And the point is, yes, government agencies, government personnel, congressmen, presidents, whoever is in charge, there's been fraudulence somewhere along the line the whole time. Investigating into all the agencies at one time, as I suggest, to ensure our nation's security. That is with what done. If officials weren't doing their job, then yes, but they need to be fired for not doing the Secretary of the Treasury. Fired that they have. If wasn't doing his, but then don't necessarily keep it a secret, because those of us who question our government and whether they're doing the right thing for the American people, we want to know why the NSA director got fired. Why did the FBI director get fired? Why is the agencies, the Social Security Administration director getting fired? Why? Okay. Yes, I understand new cabinet members come in and they take over certain positions. I get it. But still, people who are in those positions and get fired without having somebody to replace them, that is putting our country in jeopardy. And it is not maintaining our security and our safety as a country. That's why I question why these high-ranking officials are being fired. Again, as I stated before, yes, every president fires somebody. They want their people in there. Absolutely, I get it. Okay. Me? No. I would want to make sure that before I fire somebody, they're actually not doing their job. As I've stated before, I don't need to have people around me that like me or that think the same way that I do. I'm not going to fire them for that. I will fire them for them not doing their due diligence in doing and maintaining their job description and meeting the requirements of that job description. That is why people get fired. Not because I don't like them, not because I don't agree with them. That's not how our Constitution is written. So with those being said, I know I only covered my 2 last podcasts and the clips that came from those podcasts. To go back, I would have to go back 6 months, and that's a lot of content to go back on. So if there are any comments, I still welcome them. I welcome them on anything that I've presented today. I welcome comments on anything that I continue to present and later dates. I look forward to it. I appreciate the comments from anyone who would like to talk. It opens communication. Hopefully, if I have something incorrect, I will be corrected, as I was in one of them. I forgot to multiply by 100 in my DEI comment, in my DEI information, and I was corrected, and I appreciate that. I'm human. I am fallible. We all are as humans. Next thing, is there a topic that you would like me to discuss? Is there some information I have presented that is incorrect? Please help me to know this. Give me some topics you would like to hear about. As I've said before, I try my best to do my research to find the truth where it's possible with today's media and present based on that. I do not in any way knowingly lie to any of you. Yes, it's my opinion, but it's my opinion based on the information that I have received through media and through multiple resources that I've done my research through. Does anyone have any factual information about why people were fired without an investigation? This is an area I would love to hear facts about. Please enlighten me. I've had people tell me they were fired because they weren't doing their job. How do we know that? I've yet to find a report about any particular person or persons that was not doing the job that was described as their job description. So where's that information? Where can I find it? Help me locate it. I'd appreciate it. And Until next week, I thank you for your time and participation. We can't have a conversation and learn more if we don't communicate with each other. Have a great week, and next week's information shall be interesting. Thank you very much. Have a great night.